All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm Angela Paxton. I'm a project manager over at the School of Medicine, Department of Pediatrics. I'm a former clinical research coordinator and former quality improvement engineer too. So I've used REDCap in not only research applications, but quality improvement and project and data management. And our arrow's not working. There we go. So this afternoon, I wanted to introduce Mary Delaney. Mary Delaney's also here. Wave, Mary Delaney. She's our partner in crime. I'm going to be talking about a training course this afternoon where obviously we use REDCap, but most of our course is on Canvas. So Mary had a big role in creating our Canvas. So for objectives this afternoon, I'm going to spend a little time on the content of our project work, the Indiana Early Autism Evaluation Hub Network. And then I'll be more specific and talk about the training course where we're actually training primary care clinicians to do a comprehensive 90-minute autism evaluation in their primary care clinics. Then I'll spend most of my time talking about how I use REDCap to create scoring assessments, if you will, almost creating a test for our learners, and then also a scoring key or a feedback tool. And you'll see me use some of the features of REDCap like surveys, calculated fields, piping, love piping, branching logic, email fields, all these tools are used to improve our course workflow. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about the Early Autism Evaluation Network. This is a 3-tiered approach to reduce the age of diagnosis. Our main goal was to reduce time from autism concern by the primary care doc or mom and dad or the grandparents to the diagnosis, to enrollment in those all important early interventions. So the first tier, we work to improve developmental surveillance and screening at well-child visits at the primary care sites all around our state. Mary and I did a lot of traveling before the pandemic, introducing tools to the doctors and showing them how they could bill with these developmental screening tools. And of course, where do they refer children at risk for autism? The second tier is what I'll focus on today. Autism evaluation for children with an increased likelihood of autism based on the screen, based on surveillance, ages 14 to 47 months in a primary care setting. So picture where you go to get your primary care for your child. And those visits are usually 10 or 15 minutes. These are 90-minute comprehensive autism evaluations. These doctors are trained by IUSM faculty and staff here on campus. About 80% of the kids seen in the primary care, these hubs, are given a diagnosis, but about 20% we're not quite sure. These are more complex cases. Children were just not quite sure about something else is going on. So those 20% do get referred on for further evaluation at a specialty care clinic, like let's say Riley. Okay, so let me talk about our training course very briefly, and then we'll get into the REDCap. So the first phase of our training involves a didactic training over 2 days, about 15 hours. Usually it's in person, but it can be done remotely. Last year we did it remotely. And this year, next week, we'll be doing a hybrid training. So that'll be lots of fun. We're going to have in-person and hybrid learners, just like we're doing today at REDCap Day. The second phase of our training involves Practicum. So our learners that are clinicians, they're going to do lots of case observations. So they're looking at autism evaluations that have been recorded on video. Maybe they're looking at live visits, and then they're being assessed on their knowledge of that visit. So they're being assessed at whether or not this child passed or failed certain pieces of the evaluation. The final phase of the second part of the practicum is when the learner will actually be doing their own autism evaluations, and they're going to assess their own performance. And then in turn, they're going to get feedback from our experts here at IUSM, getting experts from faculty. And I'll show you how I did that with REDCap. Okay, so some of the challenges going back to Mary's role, how great Mary did setting up Canvas. There were some challenges with Canvas, okay? We started using it, 3 years ago? So we love Canvas. Canvas is great. Our course looks awesome now, but learning Canvas was tricky and it was hard to assess outcomes. Canvas has assignments and quizzes. We can build tests in there. We can put our answer keys in there, but it was a little clunky for us. we wanted to do some of these assessments elsewhere outside of the course. So we thought, well, let's use REDCap to do all of our assessments. So again, assessment administration was a little tricky. Course workflow is a little clunky. So we set out to incorporate REDCap into our training course. So in these 3 phases, I'm going to talk about how I used surveys and reports. Phase 2, I'll show you how I built the test or the assessment of those video observations. And then I'll show you how I built a scoring tool that would come right back and give the learner feedback. So obviously in that tool, I used a lot of branching logic, a lot of calculated fields, a lot of, did they get this question right? 1 point or 0 points. And then I used automatic survey to get them from the one test to the second. And then phase 3, I'll talk about email fields. You might remember hearing about this from Brenda this morning. I'll try to give you some unique information. And piping, I love piping. That was really helpful to create my feedback tools. And print PDFs, you probably all know how to do this, but if we have time, I want to share some lessons learned there. Okay, first phase, let's talk about surveys and reports. Brenda talked a lot about survey links this morning, but I just want to highlight a couple things. There's many ways you can get that survey to your respondents, right? Certainly we can use the public survey URL. I love using the custom public survey URL. Mary created a registration survey for us to use for our training next week. We did that in REDCap, so it made sense. It was intuitive to call it EAE_registration. It looked nicer in our emails. It looks nicer in our correspondence with our attendees. So it's nice to use that custom link. You can also do a short public survey link, a lot shorter than that first one. I've used embed HTML code in my REDCap surveys to lead a respondent from one survey to another. Or maybe you have a web page and you want to get that link right there on the web page to get your respondent to go do another survey. That's a very nice feature. Brenda also talked about these, but I want to highlight how important it is to know about QR codes and access codes when you're doing snail mail, when you're doing flyers, pieces of paper still. It's so nice to have the surveys, with a QR code, right? They can just scan it and do it right there and then on their phone. Mary and I were at a pediatric conference last week and had a trifold board, the old-fashioned way to do a conference. And it would be so nice to have a QR code there. As the doctors walk by, we can invite them to scan the code and do a survey right then and there. If you were presenting, you could lead the audience to the web address there you see in the middle, and then tell them to enter the code. That's another way to get them to a survey. Looks like you can also do a generate short code. I haven't used that feature, but it looks good because you could have, it expires after a short time. So if you didn't want to have that survey live for a long time, you could use generate short code. This page can also be printed for the respondent. So easy to take it and add it to an email or, like I said, a paper flyer. Reports. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about REDCap reports. I was not a big user of REDCap reports, to be completely honest with all of you. In the beginning, when I learned REDCap, I tended to take all my data and bring it to Excel. I loved Excel. I loved doing my formulas in Excel. I love making my pretty pictures and graphs. But I want to tell you, REDCap reports can be really handy. So I'm going to go back to that registration database that I keep talking about that we did for the training for next week. It's got a lot of data in it. It's got about 20 or 25 fields in it. Mary wanted to collect name, practice, phone number, dietary restrictions. Are they coming in person? Are they coming virtually? We wanted to know all of that. But I had some other applications in my training. I needed a roster. All that information's in the registration already. Why would I build another tool? Why would I build another Excel file? I need to give attendance to, or Mary does, to the CME office so our attendees get credit. So what I did is I took that larger registration database that Mary created with all that data in it already, and I just created a report with 4 fields. These are the 4 fields that the CME office is going to ask Mary to send right after the training. I wanted last name first. I wanted credentials. For my example, I'm only going to filter out the MDs. In all fairness, we want to know NPs as well, but for my example here today, I wanted to filter out just the MDs. So you can see I selected the variable credentials. They're in step 3. I skipped some steps, sorry. I want to go back to step 1. You can also choose who can edit and view your report. They're in user access. So then I added my fields. Remember, there's about 25 fields in this database. I picked 4. Then I filtered them by MD. And then you can also sort them. I wanted to sort by last name, so it's real pretty when I send it to the CME office. Don't forget to hit Save Report, your blue button there at the bottom. And that's what it looks like. You go up there to the top right to view your report, CME report, and know that those people are made up or in this room. So nobody's, I'm not giving out anybody's emails. Dr. Ming is not a real person. I made up that email. 24 records. We had 24 records of data, but only 3 fit my, my filter on the last page. So now I've got this data that I can cut and paste, email to CME, done. Don't need, another database. Mary's gonna be so happy. Reports also have some great chart features. There's the pie chart and the bar chart. Mary and I go to a weekly meeting with our bosses. We enjoy this 2-hour meeting so much. Oh, I'm recorded, dear. Okay. Anyway, they'll ask, how are we doing? How's registration going? How many doctors are coming? How many nurse practitioners are coming? So quickly, I can just do a pie chart and say, look, we've got of 24 respondents thus far, 15 are MDs, 3 are nurse practitioners. You can see it real clearly on the bar chart as well. This can be downloaded, added to an agenda or a PowerPoint slide for your weekly meeting with your team. Okay, let's move on to the second phase of our training. We're going to get into those scoring tools that I talked about. We wanted to give a chance. We wanted to make sure the learners could receive scoring feedback when they do their assessments. So I'm going to go over branching logic. I know Brenda talked about this earlier, but I'm going to highlight some lessons learned. We're going to talk about calculated fields, lots of fields in a scoring assessment, let me tell you. And I'm going to use automatic survey to get us from the learner assessment to the faculty feedback and then back to the learner. It's really cool. Okay, the first one we're talking about here is the observation assessment. So picture a learner watching a video of a young child at risk or increased likelihood of autism. They're watching an expert clinician on video. It could be a live assessment as well. We do that also, but typically it's a recorded visit, an assignment, if you will. And now we want to assess the learner's knowledge of that video. Are they picking up all the pieces of the evaluation? So that's the assessment. It's 12 questions, 12 domains in this autism screen. And once they do that, they'll submit it and they'll get their answers back just in time, like immediately. Mary doesn't have to score a tool. There's no filling out a Word document and sending it to Mary. It's all on REDCap, and we get all that data that Dr. McNally, who just arrived, will want me to analyze at the end of our training to do a summary. Okay, so let's talk about the specifics of how I built these tools. I think there's 105 fields. I wouldn't do that to you in 30 minutes. We're just going to talk about a couple. I know Brenda talked about branching logic. Are people familiar with branching logic? Okay, I'll go quickly through this, but I just want to show you how it works with the scoring tool. So that first field there on the left, in the top left, I coded recorded visit a 1 and live visit was a 2. And then I have my second question is that multiple choice field where these are those 5 video assignments. So you can see branching logic. We all know this. You're going to select the green icon there, the green arrows to input your branching logic. I want this question to show up if they select recorded visit, coded as a 1. Does that make sense? I think most of you have done this. So now look on the right, that's what the respondent will see. So the respondent selected recorded visit. The question pops up. They select which video they're observing. And then they're going to take a test, a 12-question test. Did this child pass or fail each of 12 domains? Again, I'm not showing you everything. I'm showing you 12 questions, pass or fail. Okay, how did I code this on the back end so I can score it? Here's one example. Question 1 was turn taking. Picture a young child doing an autism evaluation. Basically, they're passing a ball back and forth between the clinician and the child. And there's certain criteria that has to be met. I won't go into that detail, but we want the learner to say, did this child pass this domain or not, pass or fail? It's good, as Brenda said earlier, tend to do the positive, code it as a 1, code your negatives as a 0, yeses are 1, nos are 0. That's just a good habit to get into. I think there could be exceptions to that. as she was saying, think about the back end, think about analysis, what makes sense when you code your multiple choice responses. Okay, so now I've got to do the scoring piece. So I'm kind of moving around a little bit. This is actually a hidden field, but it's going to help me give a score to our learner here in a minute. So the equation is, how many are good with calculated fields? Doing equations. So this is a real simple field I did. It's if the condition, comma, is true, I'm going to give them a 1. If the condition is false, I want to give them a 0. It's going to make it real easy for me to score this person, right, in a minute. So my equation there is if the variable is blank, that's what that means, those double quotes, they get 0 points. You got to include the blank. I've learned this. You know, your learner might leave some things blank. They're going to get 0 points for blank for our application. If they get it correct for this question, pass was correct, they get 1 point. If they mark fail, they get 0 points. So I did this for all 12 questions, and then I added those up to get a total score. There are many ways to do this. So you expert calculated field folks, you could do this all in one field. I wanted to do it simply like this. It made it easier for me to make sure I didn't have any mistakes. So here's my total score correct. I actually have another field that will take this total score correct and convert it to percentage, because that's what we need to show the learner. Did they get over 80% correct to move on to the next video assignment? This person, I'll show you in a moment. Okay, so what we want to do now, so they've done the assessment, they've watched the video, they've answered 12 questions. I want to give them their answer key, not the answers, but their total score. So I need to set in survey termination options. I need to click that button, auto continue to the next survey. Then it's not really a survey, it's more of a descriptive field box that will give them their results. And it looks sort of like this. It's much longer than this, but just the first 3 questions will come out. I use some piping here, which I'll talk about in a moment. They got 10 out of 12 right. That was converted to a percentage by our instructions earlier in Canvas that Mary's done such a wonderful job creating. They know that they have to get over 80% in 2 assignments to go forward. Just a little background for you on our training course. That second comment there, your stat score is correct. That's actually a field and piping. So again, there's a lot of calculations on the back end. And then we want to tell them if their assessment of risk for autism was correct or not. Okay, our final phase of our training is the practicum, where the learner's doing their own autism evaluations. They have to do some self-assessment. Then they want to send that assessment to faculty, expert faculty, to get feedback. And that faculty does an assessment on the, I want to go back to a recorded, their recorded visit. They actually upload this very securely to SharePoint. They upload the video so the faculty can observe the video and give the learner feedback. So this has 3 tools. I want to do the learner assessment of themselves. I want that sent to the faculty member. I want the faculty member to give some feedback. And then that kind of summary of both will come back to the learner. This looks very complicated. Okay, so Brenda explained to you participant lists earlier. I think a lot of us add emails to our projects that way. Sometimes we don't know the emails going into the project. So I created 2 fields where the learner can enter their email and the faculty email. You've got to set these fields up as text fields, and you have to validate them. Again, she showed this earlier. She stole my thunder. 10 minutes, thank you. So you want to set that over there in the right. Do you see that validation box? You might be used to adding like decimal places here, or the way you want a date to look, but you have to validate your text box as an email. The second step, which I just talked about, is the learner tool. Let me go back here. So that first tool has to have those 2 email text boxes. That's where the learner will add their email, and the faculty will, the learner will add the faculty too. And I'll show you how I did that. The third step in the second instrument is I have to, in survey customization settings, that's in the survey settings, I have to select faculty email. So the learner assessment will go to the faculty. I know it's very complex, and I'm happy to send you some more screenshots to make it more clear. But for my 30 minutes, this is what I'm going to talk about today. The third instrument then goes back to the learner. That's why it's important that the learner puts their email in. Okay, so my supervisor, Dr. McNally, said, no, wait a minute. When they enter emails, sometimes they spell them incorrectly or they don't know the email. We had to figure out a way that we could do kind of a multiple choice, like select the faculty, select the email. Well, remember, email fields are text boxes. So I learned from my friend, Christy James, who's next door doing her presentation, you can use action tag @health-text. So this is really fun. So it's a text box, but it's almost like a calculated field. You see how I did that? So in the action tag, you add a equation, and you can see it there. It's a little bit bigger on the bottom left. You have two fields. You have the multiple choice field where it says 98, Mary Delaney. For today's purposes, she's faculty. And then 99, Angela Paxton is faculty. The learner will pick who their faculty person is, their expert who's going to be reviewing their assessments. They'll select that. They don't need to know the email. Then in the text field, it's kind of an if-then. If they select Mary Delaney, Mary's email will pop up into a text box field. If they select me, it'll be my email. I know it's complicated, but it's really cool when it works. Let me go back here a little bit. So again, learner assessment goes to the faculty, goes back to the learner. Let me show you what that looks like. Here's email notification. Mary loves me. She wanted me to put notify on for all these tools. So the beauty of the way I did this is a learner, a busy doctor can do this on a Friday evening over the weekend. Mary's not working. She's not looking at Word documents. She's not scanning things. It's all done on REDCap. All the data's there. The learner can do their assessment. The faculty can do the feedback on their time when they can get it done. And then it goes right back to the learner without our involvement. But Mary might want to know what's happening because her boss during our 2-hour weekly meeting is going to ask, who's done their tests, who's done their assessments, has the faculty done their feedback. So we kind of want to know where we are. So we turned on the email notifications for each tool. And Mary might get sick of that, so we might turn off that last one, but we'll wait for Mary to complain. But just remember that email notifications can be your friend or your enemy. Okay, piping, love piping. Piping was really helpful for me when I built my feedback survey, which isn't really a survey. It's more of a descriptive text, a very large document where I piped in all the variables that I wanted to show the learner. I want to give all that feedback to the learner. So again, this is just a little tiny piece of this very large document that we approve, but piping can be used in field labels, field notes, your section headers. When you build that survey invitation text, you can pipe in the person's name, age, date. So piping is simply the variable in square brackets. It's real simple to bring any variable that you've already collected. As someone said earlier today, don't enter variables more than once. So look at the top left. That's my field label. That's my question. I use descriptive text. I built it as date, colon, and then the variable date. Then I did initials of the child. Again, that's the variable INIT, and then age, colon, the variable's called perf age. So when that learner gets their feedback, it looks like bam, there on the bottom right. It looks nice and clean. They have a nice summary of how they did. They're going to know their score. They're going to have comments from faculty. They're going to know what the next steps are. Are they allowed to go on to the next step? It's a very long template. Thank you. So we love piping. Okay, print PDFs. This may be intuitive. I just wanted to cover it because, again, a lot of our training in the past was done on Word documents. We'd ask those poor clinicians to download the Word document, fill it out, fill out their assessments. Now we want you to go scan it. Now we want you to send it to Mary or the faculty. Then we want Mary or the faculty to score it. A lot of steps, right? No, it's all going to be done on REDCap. If they would like a PDF of their summary, they could click PDF there at the top. Then they'll download those responses, and it looks kind of like that on the bottom. They could print it like old days on paper, or they could save it in a folder. I think Mary will probably save all these in a secure folder. But quite frankly, all the data is there in my REDCap project, right? So when Dr. McNally asks for some analysis here in 6 months, all the data is going to be there. I can tell her what the scores were averaging over one training, or how a faculty member scores learners, how this faculty member scores learners, maybe at one practice, how these learners did. Did they take an in-person training? Did they do a remote training? We can look at a lot of those different things. All the data is in one place. Okay, it looks like I have about 4 minutes. I do want to thank the trustees of Indiana University 2023, our funders for this work. We've been doing this work since 2012. We have a recent funder, the Haddad family. We're very thankful for them. Riley Children's Foundation has supported us for several years. I want to thank our fearless leaders, Dr. Mary Ciccarelli and Dr. Becca McNally. Dr. McNally's in the room here. She's going to wave, maybe. Okay. I want to thank them. And my email, I think, is on the sketch, but I'm arpaxton at iu.edu. It looks like I have a few minutes for questions. There was a, can everyone hear Angela? I hope so. Oh, they said yes. Okay. I just want to make the point before we open it for questions that REDCap is great for research, right? I use it for research. It's wonderful. But quite frankly, I was doing quality improvement work before I did my research work as a clinical research coordinator. It can be used for, as Rachel was talking about earlier, how she used it for project management. Great, okay. She did a great job showing us how we can use it for project management. Mary Delaney and I use it for this monthly call to take attendance, which sounds so silly, but we keep track of the topics that are covered every month because Becca or Mary are going to ask us, when did we talk about ABA? Like, and we put keywords in and say ABA, and we can say, yep, it was February of 2022. Like, it seems so silly, but REDCap is so great for this kind of stuff. So I'm really, go ahead. Oh my gosh. I started it right before Christmas. But I do a lot of other things. We got done maybe 6 weeks ago, maybe. No, we are getting ready to start it next week, but we've been practicing and playing with it and testing it. But no, we've been building. We've been doing these assessments for several years, but never on REDCap like this. So we'll tell you how it goes next year at REDCap Day. We'll have some data on how it went. Yes, early autism. Yeah, definitely. Anybody does any kind of assessment work, and you could build a scoring tool right in there. REDCap can do so many wonderful things. Yeah. 2 minutes. I'll try to repeat the question. Forgot.
One of the questions in the chat said any recommendations or resources to get started.
Oh, that's great. Any resources or recommendations to get started with? Yeah, I mean, quite frankly, it was a test, right? I built a test, questions for a test. So yeah, this question probably doesn't apply to me. But that's really what you have to do is start with your assessment, and then you build a scoring key, basically. You know, lots of calculated fields. I think there's easier ways to do it. You know, like I was learning as I went. Your fields could probably be shorter than mine are, but yeah, that's really it. But I think the feedback thing is important as well. Like, you want it to look nice for your learner. And I got feedback from my team on how it should look, and use piping again. So you don't have to repeat those variables throughout your project. Just pull them from the first time they were entered.
First time is always the longest time. And
yeah.
Revise, and then the next time it's like, oh,
I could do this quicker than I could do this quicker than 4 months. And know that I have other job responsibilities. So it wasn't like I really worked on this for 4 months. I had a lot of feedback from our team, right? Right. We made changes. Yeah. And we'll keep changing it, I'm sure. But it's a nice foundation for future assessments and changes that we make to the tests. We're going to add more videos, so I'll have to add more answer key, branching logic, you know.
Is there anyone particular at REDCap that you had help with?
Yes, I should have thanked Catherine. Oh, and those Wednesday office hours are great. I mean, I just have those on my calendar. I think it's at 3:30. Is that right? 3 o'clock. And I just put it on my calendar, and I wait in line to ask my question. And it's usually a formula that I just can't get to work. And she'll say, oh, you forgot your comma, or, oh, try this. She always helps me work through it.
She's infinitely patient.
Test your projects. Have your boss, have your husband, you know, have somebody go through and go, this doesn't make sense. I think somebody said that earlier. Because Mary and I look at this all day long. We're like, yeah, it's fine. And then when you get outside eyes, you make some changes. Thanks for coming. It was